I am not allowed, based on our marriage laws and the contract we signed with each other, to have sex with anybody else.
Right.
So these urges that come, I have to share them with the one person I decide to spend the rest of my life with.
Right.
So that brings me back to my soundbite.
Okay.
Right. I don't understand, and this is what we can discuss as a woman, because I don't want to say it's a man versus woman thing, but a lot of women do complain, oh, my husband's always on me. Why is he always on me? If sex is going to be a chore for you that you don't really want to do, why do women constantly push monogamy on men? If you know that you don't want to have to deal with him all the time just wanting you, why do you push monogamy on men?
Well, who's to say I pushed anything on anybody? Like,
well, we know that you pushed monogamy on me.
I pushed monogamy. I forced you to get married to me?
Time out. I didn't say you forced me to get married, but did you not say to me that you wanted to be engaged and you wanted to be married before you lived with me? You didn't say that?
I want $1 billion. That don't mean I'm going to get it. I can want something, asking, but not...
You
Something wrong? I see your face twitching and itching.
I don't agree with the fact that because you requested it, she's pressing it on him. You was able to opt out anytime you want if it's not what you wanted. And I also don't necessarily agree that women press monogamy on men. It's just that it's a conversation that we do not have.
Okay, I wasn't going to disagree with the first two. The last one, women definitely pressure men for monogamy all the time. All the time. For exclusivity, they're pushing for it. They ask for it. They keep...
Yeah, but asking something is not necessarily...
Repeatedly.
I can understand that.
Yes. 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 Yeah. Yeah, or even sometimes they go into it, friends with benefits, we cool, and then all of a sudden, they start to catch feelings and they start pushing like, but what if we were exclusive? And they start doing that. And here's the thing, asking, you're right, asking is not pressure. Hold on. Asking is not pressure, you're right. But there's ways in which you ask.
I understand.
Right? That emotional aspect where you're like, I'm feeling sad or whatever. So
you know what? One thing?
What?
Play the video and I'm going to stay in my lane.
They're married.
I understand, but it doesn't matter. I don't know their situation. I know mine. And we don't have the full on, I'm basing myself on the clip, so it's hard for me to be like, yeah, this and that and blah, blah.
I don't feel like I was adequately prepared for marriage. And I've said that before, because if I knew that marriage and monogamy was going to involve me trying to meet you where you were at sexually for years to come, then I probably would have reevaluated it if I wanted to be monogamous anyway.
So that's fair, but we're not even talking about marriage. Let's even talk about dating, right?
Okay.
Two people are dating. Typically in society, who asks for exclusivity first, a woman or a man?
I would say a woman.
Thank you. That was my whole point. See, you were going all over the place. If women typically ask for exclusivity first, then when they get exclusivity, say, he always on me, he always want to have. Why are we asking men for exclusivity if we do not want to participate for sex at the same level as men? We have to think about what that does to a man.
I hear that.
You know what it's like? It's kind of like when someone's like, let's start a business together. And then once the business comes along, one person's just like, I don't want to do some of the work. And you're just like, well, you proposed this idea to me, and then you're not going to do the labor? Huh? And here's the tough part, and this is where people go crazy. It's like, well, I don't want to feel like it's a responsibility. And I'm like, that's so interesting. So you think someone has the responsibility to give you exclusively, but you don't have the responsibility to reciprocate sex. How does that make sense, Sway?
That's exactly what I said. It was like, so no.
So he has the responsibility to not do with anyone else, but you don't have the responsibility. And people are like, sex should never be responsibility. On what planet? There's labors of emotion, right? You have an emotional responsibility within a commitment. You have a time responsibility within a relationship. And you also have a financial responsibility. You got all kinds. So why is it that when it comes to the bedroom, we're all like, there's no responsibilities? What? Now, do not misinterpret what I'm saying. I'm not saying if he says lay down and put out that you have to do it. That's not what I said. But it doesn't change the fact that you have a responsibility.
You shouldn't do anything against your will, but know that there's going to be expectations.
Yeah. I don't know what job you can come to where you're just like, I'm just not doing this today, and then still think you're supposed to keep the job and no one's supposed to say anything to you. What? Eventually it's going to catch up. It's going to cause problems. So yeah, I do think there is a responsibility, both emotionally, physically, all levels. You're giving yourself to somebody.
At some point, your boss is going to come down to you and be like, why are you not doing this job? Maybe you have some valid answers.
Yeah.
But you're going to have that conversation.
Yeah.
So now let's go back to what you asked me. You said to me, you never pressured me to get married. In 2007, we were living together, right? You said you no longer wanted to live with me and shack up with me because you wanted to be my wife, not my girlfriend.
Right, because I wanted to know where the
that don't
relationship
sound like
was going.
pressure to you?
It sounds like me voicing where I see my life going.
Hence why I said I'm gonna stay in my lane, because I didn't have all the information.
What do you think?
Well, yeah, you. It's a pressure. That's pressure. And then she goes, I pressured you. Yeah, you did.
Here's something interesting. You could pressure someone and not be in the wrong. If you're saying, I want to be married, that's something that I want, that could put pressure on the other person. Doesn't make you wrong. The same way I could be dating a girl for a long time, she doesn't want to put out because whatever, and I could be like, I really want to do it. That could put pressure on her, and I'm not necessarily wrong.
Yeah, it's not a right or wrong thing right here.
Yeah.
It's a pressure if it's just no pressure.
Yeah.
But it's not because you necessarily, it feels like it's pressure that it's necessarily
bad.
Yes,
Yeah.
I understand that. Bad or not, it's gonna be determined of how the person's gonna take it.
What about being engaged?
You might have felt pressure.
What about
There was
being
no pressure
engaged?
behind it.
I said, we don't got to rush to get married. You said, I don't want to be engaged longer than a year. Is that not pressure?
That's me voicing my opinion about it.
You're voicing it out, I understand, but I mean, when you put a date on something, it's an ultimatum. By this date, it should be that. That's an ultimatum. Yes, you're voicing it out, and you do you, boo-boo, and you should. You should voice it out. Again, I'm not saying you're right or wrong. I don't think it's a right or wrong thing. It's yes, you voice it out, but it's an ultimatum. An ultimatum is pressure.
Sounds like pressure to me. So you say you want to be engaged, I get engaged. You say you want to be married within a year. We do that. We get married, then you make it seem like this is a chore to your husband. Once again, I ask the question, why do women who push forth monogamy on the man they're dating then get overwhelmed when that man who tries to provide that monogamy to you? Why do you get upset when we're trying to be what you want us to be? You don't want me to be with no one else, right? Right? I'm asking. This is a serious
Right,
question.
yes, absolutely.
You don't want me to be with no one else.
Absolutely.
So if I decide that all this testosterone I have, I want to give to you, why is this so overwhelming now? This is what you asked for.
Such a funny way to sound. I mean, I'm trying to bust all over you, trying to shoot up your club. It's such an interesting way of putting it.
I understand why he does that. And that's why I said, I'm glad I said that in the beginning. I was like, yo, I'm going to stay in my lane and I'm going to listen to the whole thing before I even say something.
So what do you think?
I understand where he's coming from. It's just a valid question in his position. In his position, and what I see is like, okay, you pressured me to do this, you pressured me to do that. When I do that, then we come to the, and that's a true, like, it's a true, it's something, nothing. Okay, cool. And you don't have to say yes, but I'm like, I can't, so I gotta, so okay. But you don't want, okay. No.
Again, 26 and 27-year-old Kadeen was like, okay, here's the natural succession of life. You graduate, you're working, you meet somebody, you guys are dating. You want children.
Yes.
I want children.
Yes.
We don't want to wait too long or too late to have children,
Yes.
though now a lot of people are waiting until their 30s to have
Yes.
children.
And I understand why.
And we at that time felt like, well, we're doing everything in this natural succession that the forces that be have given us this timeline. However, I did not realize that after having children, after, career changes, all of the turbulences that we've been through in life, that was going to have a direct effect on my sex drive.
I think it's cool that they're talking about it. If it's weird that they're putting it out there, but it could be useful for some people.
I mean, that's a brand. They do these kind of conversations. They have this podcast. They do this.
I wouldn't do it, but it can get people to talk, so it's great. It's great that they're having this conversation.
One thing I will say, people watch this and be like, oh my God, they're going to get divorced soon. I think people don't realize what kind of conversations happen within a marriage and how complicated they could be. And they can look just like that. Just because people have very strong disagreements doesn't mean that they're like, I'm cutting it loose. And they've been married for well over a decade. They seem fine. So for you to sit there and be like, they're going to get divorced, it tells me that you don't really have a really great concept of what commitment looks like. Because for a lot of people, conversations like this are perfectly normal.
Yeah, you think it's going to be easy peasy lemon squeezy, but sometimes it's difficult difficult, lemon difficult. You know what I mean? It's not always you're going to have disagreement.
Yeah, some of the lemons are just dry.
Yeah, some of them lemons are dry, and sometimes you're the lemon. You understand what I'm saying? I think it's very healthy that they're having this conversation. That they broadcast it, that's another thing, to each their own. But I think it's good that they're having this conversation. In what way having conversation is bad? And you think you're cringing, you have to have these conversations. I understand his side, I understand her side.
Yeah, and you know, this is a real struggle for some ladies, because after having kids, after going through that stuff, it affects their hormone levels, everything's out of whack. So this is not a foreign phenomenon. And so in that sense, I sympathize with their position, because it's a tough one. It's a difficult one to manage, right?
The body change.
Yeah.
You feel differently about every...
Yeah, it's not easy. It's not an easy discussion, and it's not to be like, that's your job, do it. But there is a discussion to be had, period. That's what I think we're trying to get at.
It's not an easy road.
Yeah, it's difficult, man. It's hard. And, you know, some people might say, listen, you need to be more creative with how you approach the discussion. Maybe you guys see a therapist for this kind of stuff. Or maybe you guys try to explore different ways of doing it and, like, try to expand the bedroom to maybe raise that. But sometimes those things are not enough. Sometimes the wiring is just off. It's not to put blame. It's not to do this. But it's like, yo, that causes problems. Mm-hmm. Like, if I got all this pent-up frustration of not being able to, and you're not going to reciprocate, and there's nothing I could do, it's going to cause friction. So at least being able to talk about it in a way that's conducive might be helpful. And I think it raises some good questions. It raises good questions about some of the difficulties that happens within a long relationship. And then if you come at this discussion, you're like, well, why don't you just leave the relationship? Well,
sometimes it's more complicated than that.
Way more, you know, whether it's kids involved, whether it's your lives are so intertwined, you don't just quit on a marriage or on a relationship because one aspect is completely missing. But you also don't just tolerate things that are completely missing because you want to stay committed. There has to be a middle ground.
As the great Steve Harvey said, there's no such thing as a plan B.
Yeah. And if you want to fix things, you got to talk about it, right?
That's it.
If you want something, you got to ask for it. You have not.
Because you asked not.
And I think that's what he was having this conversation about. It's an interesting question. Maybe for some of those women, they got to let the man go. You know what I mean? Let him go, get some side booty.
Some of them do.
I know.
Some of them do.
I know. Yeah. So just something to think about. But we want to hear your perspective. Maybe you guys got a different perspective than us. We'd love to hear from you guys. Ladies, by all means, go in the comments and go ham. But we want to hear from you. What?
Every time you say ladies, I hear ladies pop like that. Mira como goza, mira como